Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee. This is one of 3 area-based committees of Dorset Council, and our remit covers the previous Purbeck District Council and most of the previous East Dorset District Council areas. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Tony Coombs and I'm chairman of this committee. I'd like to introduce to you the Office of Support we have with us today. We have Anna Lee, who is Head of Service, Kim Cowell, Principal Planning Officer, Naomi Shinkins, Planning Case Officer, Neil Turner from Highways, Chris Osborne, who is the Project Engineer covering drainage and flooding for this application. Chelsea Gollidge will be reading out the public representations. Phil Crowther is our legal support, and David Northover, our Committee Support Officer. I would also like to thank officers behind the scenes who are making today's virtual meeting possible. We couldn't do it without you guys. So further to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and council staff in accordance with the government's guidance on social distancing by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. Full details of these processes are published in the agenda on page 5. Where a decision is required, committee members will express a minded to decision in respect to the recommendations set out in their officer reports, with decisions being taken under officer delegated authority. Anna Lee, as the appropriate officer, is in attendance and will enact any minded to decision today. This meeting is being live streamed to the public and a copy of the recording will be available on the website afterwards. Public participation will take the form of written statements as opposed to public speaking. And we will follow the agenda as published, as we only have one item today. So first of all, if I move on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. David, do we have any apologies this morning, please?
Yes, Chairman. Apology for absence from Councillor Bill Trite. Councillor Mike Dyer is with us this morning, but may have to leave at short notice.
Okay, that's lovely. So just to make sure that everyone else is here, please can I ask you to let me know when I call out your name. Shane Bartlett.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Mike Barron.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And can you make sure you turn your camera off, please, when you finish speaking? Alex Brenton.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Robin Cook.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Mike Dyer.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Barry Gorringe.
Present, Madam Chairman.
David Morgan.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Good morning, David. Julie Robinson. David Took.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Bill Trite has given his apologies, and John Worth.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Okay. So moving on to declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination. Do any members need to make a declaration at this point? No, that's fine. If anything comes up during the debate, please don't hesitate to make us all aware. As I already mentioned, public participation. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations, which is limited to 450 words. The maximum number of representations are 3 under each category and are accepted in strict date order. Members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address the committee will be allowed to speak. All requests have been registered with Democratic Services by 8:30 AM on Monday of this week. Are there any representations from the public that do not relate to matters on the agenda today?
No other, Chairman.
Thank you. So we have the one application before us today. Has there been any request for deferral or withdrawal, please?
Kim Cowell, Madam Chairman. No, there have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal.
Thank you. So the background information relating to the applications before us today has been available for inspection by members prior to the meeting, covering consultations, objections and representations, as well as the East Dorset local plan and the Council's related policies. I will invite the case officer to introduce the item. Members of the public, planning agents, applicants and town and parish councils have been invited to make the written submissions, and these will be read out by Chelsea Gollage, who I need to say has not been involved with the merits of the application, but only in providing technical support. And they will be read out in the following order: public against the application, public in support, the applicant or agent, town or parish council, and then local member. And I know today the local member is actually both local members are here, and one of them will be speaking to us directly. Following the public participation section, I will ask officers if there are any salient points that they wish to clarify. I will then open up the floor to members for questions and debate. In order to run the meeting, may I request that members of the committee direct their remarks and questions through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn, and requests to speak need to be made via the chat facility, please. Please can you also keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking to maintain audio quality, and the same goes for the video stream. At the end of the debate, for transparency, I will take the vote by roll call. The vote will be recorded in the minutes if 3 or more members make the necessary request. I will ask members to confirm that they have heard the entire presentation and debate before they cast their vote. So we will now move on to the application before us at agenda item 4, and that is 317-0848, and that's a full application, but it is also a hybrid planning application for, in part 1, a full application for the development of 44 dwellings and associated works, and part 2, an outline application for the construction of a first school of 1.2 hectares in extent and associated works. And that is at Lye Road, Coal Hill, Wimborne, pages 7 to 54 on your agenda. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Naomi Shinkins to start the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just share my screen now. Can everybody see my screen?
We can indeed,
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. Okay, as just mentioned, this planning application is for land at Lye Road, which does comprise a full application for the 44 dwellings and associated roads, footways, amenity areas, parking, open space, drainage, and the associated attenuation pond. This is for a full application, and the full details have been provided as part of this. The application is hybrid, so it includes the application for outline planning permission for a first school on 1.2 hectares of the site. This would not be delivered by the developer providing the residential development, but the land is being submitted as part of this application for the outline permission. So this application has been called to committee by the Head of Service given the public interest and the recent changes to flood zones. Also, to note that this presentation is approximately 55 slides long. So just to note to members that they are numbered at the top should you wish to refer to a particular slide at the end of the presentation. By way of update, there's a couple of points to update members on. So the officer's report notes that the application is within Coal Hill West ward. It's actually within the Coal Hill and Wimborne East ward, but within the parish of Wimborne Minster. Also in paragraph 7.05 of the officer report, the reference to the EA comment states that the site's now within flood zone 2 and 3. This is incorrect, and the flood zone is within flood zone 2 as noted by the Environment Agency in the response in January. So it's just flood zone 2 and not flood zone 3. Paragraph 8.7.6 refers to the viability review being secured should the site not be completed within 4 years of the permission. This is the trigger is actually if the final dwelling has not actually commenced, and this is secured by a legal agreement, section 106. Also to note that the Dorset Waste Services have been consulted on the officer's assessment set out in section 8.11 of the officer report, and they agree with this assessment and they consider that the waste collection is acceptable. And finally to note, condition 2 has been updated just to specify where the 2 speed reducing bends are located to the southwest and southeast for clarity. In terms of location and context, so this shows the location within the wider committee area. And then this slide shows the application site in relation to Wimborne Minster and Coal Hill. And so we can see Lye Road here, and the application site is located here on Lye Road, which is about 1.5 kilometres east of Wimborne. This slide shows the extent of the application site. So it comprises an irregular shaped area of open agricultural land, measuring approximately 4.7 hectares in total. So the application site does comprise 2 distinct parcels. So we have one here to the west, which will be designated for the residential development, and the parcel to the east, which is set out for the school development. Sorry, was that a question?
Sorry, Naomi, can people turn their microphones off, please?
Okay, sorry, I'll continue. The application site does include an existing access which terminates between the curtilages of Brookside Manor and numbers 238 Lye Road. These images show the existing views from Lye Road, so we have views looking east and west. And these images show the residential properties on Lye Road on the top, and then the adjacent Quarterjack development to the south of the application site on the bottom. So in terms of the application site, again, it's approximately 4.7 hectares in size. It comprises a small series of subdivided paddocks used for equestrian activities at the moment, and it's a fairly level site with a slight fall from the west. It is within the urban area of Wimborne and Coal Hill, and it's in the vicinity of the Dorset Heathlands, so it's within 5k of the Dorset Heathlands. In terms of the site constraints, there are trees and hedgerows which frame the common boundaries of the site, and there's also a category A oak tree located in the southwest corner. None of the trees on site are actually protected, just to note that. And then in here on the hatched part, we can see this is the current greenbelt boundary, which part of the site sits within. In terms of the site history, so this site, which is highlighted in red on the slide before you, is part of the local plan policy WMC8, which identifies this area south of Lye Road as an allocation site for a new neighbourhood. So WMC8 does set out that this will include 350 new homes, a sports village with new homes for Wimborne Town Football Club and Wimborne Rugby Club, 8 hectares of other active sports pitches, changing facilities, teenage activity area, allotments, a local centre, land for a first school, and about 37 hectares for a sang and country park. So the application site, again, before members today, is highlighted in the red outline, and it's noted that it's only this site under consideration today. Also to note that the site highlighted in blue is actually now have been approved as residential development, which I'll discuss further on the next slide. So still with the site history, in terms of sites with permission as set out with the allocation, there is a full list at the beginning of the officer's report, but of most significance is the Highways Junction for the actual site, which was approved in 2015. The residential developments surrounding the site, which are currently under construction or have been completed. So we have the sites on Parmenter Drive over here, which has been completed. The Barrett's, this is the Quarterjack development, which is currently under construction. and part of it is occupied. And then this is the development to the south, where outline permission was granted in 2020, and there is currently a reserve matters application under consideration. And then finally, this is the approved SANG to the south, which is for this development as a whole. So in terms of the proposed development, so the proposed development has 3 land uses. There's the access and infrastructure use, and this is for the delivery of the new strategic junction, again, which was approved in 2015, which provides the connection to Lye Road. The surface water attenuation space is also located here, and we also have the links through for pedestrians and cyclists. The second use for the site is the delivery of land for the proposed first school, and that will include associated facilities such as parking and playing fields. And then the third use for the site is the residential development, which is located to the west and will comprise 44 new dwellings. So in terms of the residential developments and the summary for that, the application site as a whole is 4.7 hectares, but as I mentioned, the residential will be 1.73 hectares for that land use. The number of residential units is 44. There won't be affordable housing provided on site, but there is a affordable housing contribution, which I will discuss later as part of my presentation. The story heights are for the garages are actually 1 to 1.5 stories high, and the proposed dwellings are 2 to 2.5 stories high. Parking will be 134 parking spaces. Access will be from Lye Road, and again, other uses will be the first school, which is in outline only. So this slide highlights the design approach to the proposed residential development. It highlights the vehicular access through the site, also the pedestrian and cycle access through the site. It also highlights the key arrival areas and how the proposed housing will seek to address that and provide active frontages. And it also highlights the constraints of building adjacent to the existing neighbouring properties. So this proposed site plan shows the residential development to the west, and for the school that's been reserved for the land for the first school to the east. So as mentioned, the school is an outline application and this is an indicative plan of how the school could be laid out on the site, where the school building is located within the green belt, which I'll discuss in more detail later in my presentation. It does show a possible expansion for the school, but this would also be located outside the green belt boundary. Again, I'll show more details of that later in the presentation. Details will need to be submitted as part of the reserve matters application, and this has been conditioned in the officer report. The applicant will provide the services and access to the school prior to the occupation of the 34th dwelling, and then when these works are completed, the land would be transferred to Dorset Council. I also need to note that the applicant is contributing £60,000 towards the land for the first school, and Section 106 monies have also been secured from the other residential development within the allocation, the site plan allocation policy, to fund the remainder of the purchase of the land for the school site. So this is the proposed site plan for the residential development to the west, as we can see here. In terms of the design, there's approximately 23 different house types. Housing mix comprises 4 1-bed properties, 6 2-beds, 15 3-beds, and 19 4-beds, which includes some 5-bed properties as well. This slide here shows a sample of a detached 4-bed property, which I've identified where they're located on the site plan, and is used in 4 locations. This gives you this is a sample of a 4-bed detached corner plot type. This is a sample of a detached 3-bed house, and it shows the hipped roof of the proposed dwelling as it's responding to the constraints of existing neighbouring properties to the boundary. So this slide shows a sample of a semi-detached 3-bed house type. And this is a semi-detached 4-bed house type. Again, a semi-detached 4-bed house type. And this slide shows a semi-detached 2-bed house type. And this slide shows a sample 5-bed house type, so it has 2.5 stories. And finally, in terms of house types, this shows a 4-bed detached house type. This shows the single garages to be proposed, and these are the single-story garages, and they come in single, double and triple garages. This is the home office type garage, which has double garage at ground level and home office space up above, and these are identified in the plan on the slide. So in terms of local representations, we've received 25 objections and 2 comments, and these were raised and considered as part of the officer's report as set out in section 6. So these comments do include concerns in relation to highway safety, impact on amenity from both the residential and the school, and concerns regarding flood risk. So the application site does sit within the parish of Wimborne Minster, and Wimborne Town Council have not objected, but they do note that they agree with the comments made by the East Dorset Environment Partnership regarding biodiversity. So Coal Hill Parish Council have also been consulted, and they've raised concerns regarding flood risk and parking. So in terms of the officer's assessment regarding the principle of development, so as mentioned, the local plan policy WMC8 does identify this land as an allocation site for a new neighbourhood. So through this policy, the Greenbelt boundary was amended to enable the residential and educational development proposed through the neighbourhood allocation to be on land outside the Greenbelt. So as such, the principle of residential development is established in line with the local plan and policies, as is the land for the first school. In terms of the proposed first school, the site is actually located partially within the Greenbelt. Again, details are reserved matter, but as shown previously and on this slide, there is sufficient space allowed for the school building and for potential expansion outside the designated Greenbelt. So the sports facilities indicated are within the Greenbelt area and are generally considered an appropriate use in the Greenbelt, subject to the full design details. So the principle of a school being placed on this site adjacent to existing and proposed residential development was established at the time of allocation, and again the details of the design will be a reserved matter. So the proposal also includes parts of the does include the principal access route, which from Lye Road, and again was approved in 2015, and it also includes the attenuation pond requirements for the drainage. These are located within the Greenbelt, and they have been assessed against the relevant local and national policies in relation to Greenbelts, and are considered acceptable where they would not impact on the openness of the Greenbelt or are acceptable forms of development within the Greenbelt. In terms of layout, appearance and scale, so the local plan policy WMC8 does state that development of the allocated site must be carried out in accordance with the master plan principles. These principles are set out in detail in the East Dorset New Neighbourhood Master Plan report from 2012. And in terms of the application before members today, the proposed is in line with the master plan principles as follows. So it is providing the delivery of the site for the first school and housing. The housing is higher density to the south as shown here, with lower density along the boundaries, and the design for this part of the site places housing backing onto the existing dwellings as required as part of the master plan principles. And this proposal also creates a half perimeter block to relate to the development to the south, which again is in the master plan principles. So in terms of the access and master plan principles, the proposal is connected by access to Lye Road. There is additional pedestrian and cycle access again to Lye Road as well, which is required in the master plan principles, and it does allow for future access points to the south if required, to the development to the south. Again, that is requirements of the master plan principles. In relation to landscaping, so the submitted landscape strategy shows the planting of landscape features within open spaces and a new tree belt to the south of the access road. And I'll go through the details of the landscaping later in my presentation, but it's generally considered in line with the required master plan principles. In terms of scale, the proposed scale is from 1 story in terms of the garages to 1.5, and then in terms of the housing, it's 2 to 2.5 stories. This in general is considered in keeping with the master plan principles and policy HE2 of the local plan. There have been concerns raised by regarding scale and impact and on neighbouring amenity, and this will be addressed later in my presentation. So in terms of appearance, the proposed dwellings include a range of residential typologies, some of which I've showed you earlier, and it has a visually interesting mix of architectural vernaculars. The materials proposed are generally traditional materials in the form of brick and render and clay and slate tiles, but these have various detailing which provides various architectural interest to the different house types and relate to the character of housing that can be found in Wimborne. And overall, the proposed appearance is considered to be acceptable and in accordance with HE2 of the local plan. In terms of highways and parking, just for context, the proposed access is shown in relation to other access points to for the adjacent developments on Lye Road. So these are the access points for the Quarterjack Park development, but I have to remind members that it's only the this application site that is under consideration today, and this access point has been approved in 2015. So in terms of the layouts, the local plan allocation requires that the access is from Lye Road, again, which is seen here, and we have the pedestrian and cycle access also located here. So third-party concerns have been raised that the proposal will impact negatively on the existing highways network and insufficient parking has been provided. Highways England have been consulted and they've raised no objection to the proposed, and again, they were part of the consultation for the approved junction in 2015, and the Dorset Council Highways team has been consulted and has raised no objections subject to conditions. So in terms of parking, this plan shows the parking provision, which comprises 44 garages, 85 driveway spaces and 5 visitor parking spaces. The table here shows a comparison with the Dorset Council parking guidance calculator. So while we can see that there is an under provision of visitor parking and unallocated parking, it is acknowledged that there's a total over provision of spaces by about 6%. So the highways team have advised there is ample opportunity for on-street parking to take place safely and without obstructing traffic flows. It's also noted that a number of private driveways are capable of parking at least one additional vehicle above the identified number required. And then in relation to highways matters in general, the transport assessment has been considered and is considered to be robust and satisfactory. The estate road is well designed and is suitable for adoption. The access strategy is suitable and again approved in 2015, and the submitted travel plan is also considered acceptable. So in terms of, again, highways in general, the highways team, they have been consulted and they've raised no objection to the proposal subject to conditions, and it's considered that the proposed is in accordance with the local plan policies KS9, KS11 and KS12. In terms of landscaping and trees, so this slide shows the proposed landscaping strategy. Existing trees on site are to be retained where possible, including the oak tree to the southwest. However, as I mentioned previously, there will be some trees to the south will be lost and replaced. There will also be some vegetation lost to the access area as well. So in terms of consultation, the tree officer has been consulted and they have agreed to the loss of vegetation as part of the access, but have requested a conditions imposed to secure planting details for that access, and that has been included in the officer's report. In terms of trees to the south, while initially they were to be retained, that was part of the proposal when it was submitted in 2017. Further surveys were carried out, and in 2019 it was identified that these trees actually have declined significantly and are likely to decline further. So the trees located on the southern boundaries are elm trees and elder trees. They're 9 meters high, the tree officer has been consulted regarding the loss of these trees, and he has noted that elm trees tend to be problematic above 7 meters, and he is satisfied for these trees to be removed and replaced. So in terms of the tree replacements, it will be replaced by 30 trees, that's 17 oaks and 13 field maples. Both of these trees would be put in at 2.5 to 3 meters in height, and they grow up to 20 meters, and they are native tree species. So again, the tree officer has confirmed this is acceptable. The Dorset Council Natural Environment team have also confirmed this acceptable as part of the biodiversity plan, and it's considered that the proposed tree replacement would actually provide a betterment where existing trees are declining, and this would provide a betterment for both the application site and adjacent development. So in terms of open space, there are small pockets of open space which are proposed throughout the development, and they total 700 square meters, and this doesn't include the area with the attenuation ponds to the east. These will be landscapes and will assist in providing a setting to the built form, as well as meeting the on-site requirement for some amenity and green space. It is acknowledged that some concerns were raised by the open space team back in 2018. However, residents will be able to make use of the new open spaces to be provided in other parts of the allocated site, including spaces for children and young people. And also the proposed development is in close proximity to the proposed sang, which is about a 450-metre walk, and it's also in close proximity to existing open space to the north of Lye Road, which is the by the way area. These views were expressed to the open space officer back in August, and the open space officer did reply by email to advise they had no further comments based on this assessment. Just to note, the 3 open space areas and the proposed attenuation pond area will be maintained by a private management company, and this is secured as part of the Section 106 agreement. In terms of boundary treatments, some existing boundary treatments will be retained. However, new boundary treatments will be provided, including closed board fencing and post and rail fencing, as shown on the plan on your slide now, and the proposed boundary treatments are considered to be acceptable and in accordance with local plan policies. In terms of impact on the character of the area, so just a reminder of the existing dwellings on Lye Road and the new dwellings as part of the Quarterjack development. where there's a range of various different house types. In terms of the built density of the development, it equates to approximately 25 dwellings per hectare. So the local plan policy LN2 sets out that a minimum density of 30 dwellings per hectare should be encouraged, unless this would conflict with the local character or distinctiveness of an area where a lower density is more appropriate. So in terms of the master plan principles, this part of the site was identified as a suitable area for the provision of lower density housing adjacent to existing dwellings to the north and the dwellings to the south as well. So the proposed density is considered acceptable in line with the master plan principles. Again, the proposed dwellings include a range of residential typologies and a visually interesting mix of architectural vernaculars. And the various scale, height and massing of the proposed dwellings are considered to be suitable for the site. The proposed materials include brick, clay and slate roof tiles. There will be some timber cladding and render, as I mentioned previously, and the materials are considered satisfactory and wood samples would be secured by condition. In terms of impact on neighbouring amenity, I'll just take a drink. So in terms of impact on neighbouring amenity in relation to the first school and the existing dwellings to the north at Brookside Manor, again, this will be considered in detail at the reserve matters stage. It is noted that the ground levels for this part of the site will be raised up by up to 1 metre in order to accommodate the drainage for the school site. However, taking into consideration that the first school is expected to be single storey and the relatively large gardens of the dwellings to the north and the existing vegetation to be retained, that it is likely that a design can be agreed at reserve matter stage that would not impact negatively on neighbouring amenity and would provide a suitable relationship to existing dwellings. Third-party concerns have been raised that the proposed would have a negative impact on neighbouring amenity where some plot types were considered to be overbearing. This is then considered to be exacerbated by need to increase floor levels by 600 mil, given the mitigation requirements for the flood zone 2 modelling, which I'll discuss later in the presentation. While the proposed development may be adjacent to some boundaries, this is generally single-storey garages, and proposed dwellings are some 4 to 50 metres from existing site boundaries, as you can see on the plan here. So in terms of the proposed heights, I'll show you some sections in a moment, but proposed dwellings are generally between 7.5 to 9.5 metres in height, and eaves are approximately at about 5 metres. And this isn't untypical of a 2-storey dwelling and is in keeping with the existing 2-storey dwellings in the surrounding area. So proposed dwellings in closer proximity to neighbouring boundaries generally have a roofscape which slopes away from those neighbouring boundaries, as we can see for these 2 plots, and I'll discuss in more detail in just a moment. So looking at a site section, this is a site, a section between plot 36 and number 4 of the Clovers. As you can see here, the proposed dwelling is 8.2 metres in height, including the requirement to raise the ground level for the flood risk requirements. It would make it 8.8 metres high, but as you can see, there's sufficient space between the existing neighbouring dwelling and the proposed dwelling. Then this is a section located here at the site where you can see a home office garage, which is also shown on the section. Here we can see the dwelling is 7.6 metres in height, and the increase to get the floor levels to the required height, it's increased by 500 mil in this instance, making it 8.1 metres in height. And the proposed garage is 6.3 and 3.2 to the eaves. So in terms of the proposed garages, again, with the home offices, I've shown where they're located on the plan, and they're generally located adjacent to gardens with sufficient space or sufficient distance from those boundaries. With regards to a specific plot located at the paddocks, so during the process of the application, some new bungalows were built at the paddocks located here and here. The new bungalows have very small gardens, and the proposed double garages on the boundary of number 2B, the paddocks, would have created an overshadowing of the outdoor amenity space of this dwelling. Following negotiations, the double garages for plots 27 and 36 have been replaced with single garages, and this was considered acceptable subject to a condition removing permitted development rights for those garages, which has been included in the officer report. So subject after those negotiations in terms of the garages, further concerns were raised regarding the increase in floor levels due to the revised flood zone modelling and the requirement to raise levels by up to 600 mil. In response to this, the ground level for this particular garage has been reduced by 300 mil, which is considered acceptable because the garage is not a habitable space. So in terms of that, then the garage is 2.43 metres to the eaves, 4.28 metres to the ridge, and to the boundary we have 3.5 metres. And the neighbour in question here has actually removed the objection they raised as a result of the changes made to the ground levels and the size of the garage. Just in terms of concerns regarding flood risk and damp to neighbouring properties, which has been raised, which I'll discuss in more detail later, but the drainage strategy does include an additional filter drain to this boundary to address that, and an informative has been requested by the Lead Flood Authority, which relates to soil compaction and hydrology requirements for the drainage details that will need to be submitted. Also to note that this neighbour as well raised concerns regarding the potential overbearing nature of plot 27, and that plot type has been amended to have a hipped roof, and the neighbour was satisfied that that amendment addressed their concerns. In terms of other neighbouring concerns raised, there's a particular concern regarding plot 26, and that given that the ground would be raised by 600 mil, that ground floor windows would impact negatively on the neighbouring amenity. The distances here show that from property to property it's 9 metres, and the actual windows are set by another 1.5 metres. The direction of sight from the windows is to the rear amenity space of the proposed property, although there may be some oblique views from first floor windows, but that's considered acceptable in terms of residential development. Given the orientation and the separation distance, the proposed is not considered to impact on neighbouring amenity that would warrant refusal, even with the increased height. And just also to note that there was a this is a single-storey garage as proposed. This was located at this point here, which would have provided additional screening, but the neighbour in question requested that that garage was moved to the other side of the proposed plot, and the developer accommodated that request, as we can see here. So just in relation to, just to mention in terms of house types with a hipped roof, we can see that the eaves are 5 metres in height and the ridge is 8.2 metres in height. And again, it slopes away from the neighbouring boundaries. In terms of biodiversity, so the application site lies within 5k of the Dorset heathland. The proposal is for a 44 net increase in residential units, and in combination with other plans and projects, there would likely be a significant effect on the Dorset heathlands. Therefore, mitigation is required. So the appropriate assessment has been carried out and again concluded that mitigation measures are required. And in terms of mitigation for the Dorset heathland, the proposed SANG is considered to have sufficient capacity for the proposed SANG for the allocation is considered to have sufficient capacity to allow for the 44 net dwellings in this site also. And it's also considered to be in a suitable location in relation to the site. And it has, apologies, sorry. Suitable location, and this has been agreed with Natural England that there is sufficient capacity to allow for mitigation for the 44 dwellings here. In terms of SAM payments, these are now collected via SIL, and there is no separate SAM payment required. It is noted that this part of the development, this development as it is an allocated site is not SIL liable. But the SIL monies collected by East Dorset covers the SAM payments for development in the area as set out in the current supplementary planning guidance for the Dorset heathlands mitigation. So in terms of a biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan, one was submitted in June 2017 and that was endorsed by the Dorset Council Natural Environment team. As it was agreed in 2017, there is a 3-year lifespan to a biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan. Therefore, an addendum was submitted to the Natural Environment team, and a summary of this is on the slide before you. The Natural Environment team have agreed that the addendum is appropriate and it can be secured by condition and include as well as the original biodiversity plan that was submitted, and this has been included in the officer's report, and the proposed development is considered acceptable in relation to biodiversity matters. In terms of drainage, so at the time of submission in 2017, the Environment Agency's online flood zone mapping showed this site entirely within flood zone 1. However, we did receive a consultation response in January from the Environment Agency, and they confirmed that the most up-to-date modelling data for the region indicates that the application site is now partially within a flood zone 2 under the 85% climate change allowance scenario, which is the worst case scenario climate change allowance. So a revised or an additional flood risk assessment was submitted in May 2021 to reflect this modelling, and it does show the site within the flood zone 2 under the 85%, as we can see on the slide. So as it is within a flood zone 2, a sequential test was required. It is noted that even though the site was allocated under policy WMC 8, that a sequential test was not carried out because at the time of allocation it was within a flood zone 1. So the sequential test has been carried out by the applicant and has been submitted. Just to note that the proposed development is categorised by the planning practice guidance as more vulnerable, which allows for the residential and educational uses. So given the vulnerability category and the flood zoning, the central test was required. So this was submitted in June 2021. An area of search was agreed with the council officers and the education team. The sequential test was carried out where the housing and the school were considered together, as the housing on this site is a part enabling development for the school site to be brought forward. In terms of the sequential test, in total 50 sites were tested through the assessment, and alternative development site was considered, in total, 50 potential sites were tested through the assessment, and there was no alternative development site that could be found. Sites tested included the Dorset Council local plan option sites. However, all these sites are currently located within the green belt, and they're therefore not appropriate or available under the current local plan, which is what the development is being considered under, or what the application is being considered under. So again, as noted, the proposed development is classed as more vulnerable within the planning practice guidance. So in accordance with the planning practice guidance, these uses are considered to be appropriate within a flood zone 2, and an exception test was not required to be applied in this instance. The Environment Agency have been consulted, and they have advised that minimum floor levels should be secured through appropriate planning condition, and they should be set no lower than 18.2 AOD. And a levels plan has been submitted to show these finished levels, and that refers to the increase in ground levels of up to 600 mil, as I've referred to earlier. And this has been considered by the Environment Agency. It's considered to be a robust approach, which allows for the 1 in 100 year events plus the 85% allowance for climate change. So it's appropriate mitigation for what's considered to be the worst case scenario. And a condition has been included in the officer report to ensure those levels are achieved. In terms of drainage.
Naomi,
yes.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
Chris Osborne has posted a comment in the chat which needs to be made public because I think it's important. So can I just bring him in to make that short statement to the wider public, please, rather than just the committee?
Yeah.
Sure, so just to read out the comment, I said the remodelling from the EA confirmed that the site is within current flood zone 2 and also within future flood zone 3, but only in the 85% climate change scenario. The EA have confirmed recently that the appropriate climate change allowance is 47%, and therefore the site is not considered to be within future flood zone 3, but is within current flood zone 2. That's just to correct something that Naomi had said. So it is within current flood zone 2.
Thank you very much. It was important that that clarification was made. Back to you, Naomi.
Okay. So in terms of drainage, existing flooding on Lye Road is acknowledged, and the local plan policies set out that developments will be required to demonstrate that flood risk does not increase as a result of the development proposed, and the options have been taken to reduce overall flood risk. It also requires that post-development surface water runoff must not exceed pre-development levels, and options should be sought to reduce levels of runoff overall, and these should be achieved through sustainable drainage systems. Again, third-party concerns have been raised that the proposal would result in increased flood risk to the surrounding areas. The Dorset Council Lead Flood Authority have been consulted on surface water drainage, and they initially raised no concerns when the site was in flood zone 2. When the site was reallocated to when the site was in flood zone 1, they had initially no concerns. When the site was reallocated to a flood zone 2, they were consulted again, and further information was required and submitted, to which the Lead Flood Authority have raised no objection to, subject to securing the details via condition, which has been included in the officer's report. So in terms of the surface water drainage, as we can see here, the surface water drainage will be positively drained away from existing properties to the north. They will be directed to the surface water drainage system that will be located along the road. The school site is also drained to this new system that's proposed, and this system would then be directed to an attenuation pond. So this attenuation pond here has been agreed with the Lead Flood Authority team. In terms of the runoff that's proposed, you can see a table on the slide here, which shows the existing greenfield runoff, which is at 14.8 litres per second in 1 in 1 year, 39.5 in 1 in 30, and 1 in 100 year, it's 55.6. So as I mentioned previously, post-development, the planning policy requires that post-development surface runoff must not exceed pre-development levels. So as we can see here, the proposed runoff levels will actually be reduced to 14.8 in all scenarios. And this actually provides a betterment in terms of 1 in 30 year flooding and 1 in 100-year flooding. So there will be a betterment in terms of how the site currently drains. It is acknowledged that there is existing flooding on Lye Road. The development is not required to address existing flood problems on Lye Road that's outside of the site. They are, however, realigning the watercourse that is on Lye Road, and this should offer some betterment where the watercourse will be enlarged and improved and realigned, and should offer some betterment, but will not solve the problem of existing flooding on Lye Road. In terms of foul drainage, the foul water from the site will discharge into the existing foul water network, which is maintained by Wessex Water. So Wessex Water have been consulted, and they've advised that the applicant has made prior contact with Wessex Water to confirm the capacity and the points of connection, and that they have no further comments to make. So in general, in terms of flood risk and drainage, based on what I've just set out, the proposed is considered acceptable in terms of policies ME6 of the local plan and in terms of national policy. In relation to waste collection, so waste is proposed to be serviced by the Dorset Waste Services team. When initially consulted, they did raise concerns, some concerns regarding plots 8 to 18 and plots 34 to 38. However, they raised concerns about carrying distances of the waste in terms of being more than 30 metres, and that they would prefer turning heads. However, the paragraph 5.1 of the Dorset Waste Services guidance to developers does note that householders should not have to carry waste more than 30 metres, and I can confirm that these properties would not have to carry their waste more than 30 metres, and the Dorset Waste Services have agreed with my assessment and confirmed that the proposed collection is acceptable and in line with their guidance notes. In terms of affordable housing, so local plan policy LN3 requires the provision of up to 50% affordable housing on greenfield sites such as the policy WMC8. However, where there's a lower level of affordable housing is offered, this must be supported by clear and robust evidence that will be subject to verification. So the proposal, as mentioned, sets out a zero affordable housing provision. However, a sum of £110,000 has been secured, or has been agreed and will be secured by the legal agreement, the Section 106 agreement. This sum has been calculated by the district valuer. The district valuer is the specialist property arm of the Valuation Office Agency, and they provide independent advice to the public sector, and they have confirmed that only £110,000 financial contribution is viable for the proposed scheme. Again, the payment will be made prior to the occupation of the 22nd dwelling. So in terms of conditions, there's the conditions broken down into, as this is a hybrid application, conditions required for the whole scheme, conditions required for the full application, and conditions required for the outline application. So in terms of the whole scheme, conditions imposed include the approved plans as listed, traffic calming measures that are required, highways and drainage works that are required, the travel plan should be secured, the tree protection needs to be secured, construction hours are set out as part of a condition, and that the proposed drainage strategy is in accordance with the drawings that have been agreed with the lead flood authority team. In terms of residential, the commencement of development has been conditioned. The requirement for surface water drainage details has been conditioned. The access requirements set out by the highways team have been conditioned. That a constructed traffic management plan is required. The biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan should be is secured via condition. That the landscape details are required. Samples of materials are required. That that obscure glazing to some of the bathrooms of the proposed development is secured, that the permitted development is removed for garages plots 27 and 36, that the site levels are secured as agreed with the Environment Agency, and that the energy and water efficiency statements will be submitted as part of the conditions to be discharged. In terms of the school, there is a commencement condition set out for the school. There's a reserve matters condition for the details to be submitted. A construction traffic management plan is required, and that the biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan is also secured for the school site, and that surface water drainage details are also to be provided. So in terms of summary, the principle of development is considered acceptable. The design of the proposed is considered acceptable subject to condition. The proposed landscaping is acceptable subject to condition. The impact on neighbouring amenity is considered acceptable subject to condition. The proposed layout and parking arrangements are considered acceptable subject to condition. Drainage considered acceptable subject to condition. The affordable housing is considered acceptable subject to securing the payment within the 106. And the impact on biodiversity is acceptable subject to condition. So in terms of the officer's recommendation, it's to grant permission subject to the completion of the legal agreement, which is to secure the affordable housing contribution, an education contribution towards middle and upper secondary provision, which is £235,000 and £200, and the education land, so the £60,000 contribution towards the first school land, and also to include the previously noted conditions. The alternative recommendation, if the 106 is not secured within 6 months or such time extended by the head of planning, that the application would be refused if that 106 was not secured. And that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Okay. Right, I'm now going to move on to the public representations, and Chelsea Goddard is going to take us through them again. And welcome to the meeting again, Chelsea.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The first comment we have is from Sarah Pickett. We object to the scale development along the boundary to Brookside Road, which are all single-storey bungalows. The proposed development is out of keeping with the height and scale, with first floor windows overlooking ours and neighbouring properties, resulting in a loss of privacy and significant shading and loss of light. The latest amendments to design include raising the properties by 2 foot to satisfy the new flood risk zoning. We haven't had any clarity on what properties this will relate to and the impact on boundary fencing. A 6-foot fence is proposed between our property and plot 26. However, if plot 26 is now being raised by 2 foot, we object to potential ground floor windows overlooking our property, as in that effect will only be a 4-foot screening. The development at Quarterjack Park, which also backs onto Brookside Road, has built single-storey bungalows along the boundary. Please consider the same planning restrictions to this development for consistency with planning design and consideration for the impact on the single-storey bungalows. The next comment is from Nick Gilliford, who's the planning manager at White Homes, the applicant. White Homes is an independent house builder with a passion for delivering exceptional build quality and a significant interest in the local community. The Lee Road site is an essential part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply and will bring forward the final piece of the Council's South Lee Road new neighbourhood allocation, for which White Homes has already delivered 81 new homes off Parmenter Drive in parallel with the new home for Wimborne Town Football Club, a popular skate park, allotments, public open space and a sang. Local people are waiting to buy the new homes. Our sales team receiving regular queries as to when the Lee Road development will be available. Over 100 people, the majority currently living within 20 miles, have already registered an interest in purchasing. In addition to 44 new, much-needed new homes, the proposals will include another key piece of community infrastructure, the land for a new first school that will serve the wider new neighbourhood, including Quarterjack Park to the south. We have worked positively with your officers during the application process to refine the scheme in response to comments, including those raised by local residents, one of which has thanked us for the proactive approach we have taken to addressing their concerns. The scheme before you is not subject to any objections from technical consultees, including Highways, Dorset Natural Environment Team, East Dorset Environmental Partnership, Dorset Wildlife Trust or Natural England. The proposed sustainable drainage scheme has been designed to take into account future climate change and includes a large detention basin on the eastern part of the site that will capture all surface water from hard surface areas, including buildings. This, alongside diversion enhancement of the existing ditch along Lee Road to provide a more natural flow path, will provide betterment over the site remaining undeveloped. The drainage proposals have been subject to detailed scrutiny by the Council's Flood Risk Management Project Engineer, who has confirmed no objection. The Environment Agency has also raised no objections, noting the scheme has applied a robust precautionary approach to dealing with flood risk. To further address climate change, in addition to provision of infrastructure to enable electric vehicle charging on all plots, the new homes themselves will be designed to reduce carbon emissions by at least 30%, in excess of current building regulation and planning policy requirements. We commend your professional officer's recommendation to you on this application, and subject to your endorsement today, look forward to delivering another high quality development for the area, our intention being to commence on site next summer. Thank you. That's all the comments for reading today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. We have 2 local members, and Maria Rowe has asked to speak to committee. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. It is clear that the UK is experiencing warmer summers and wetter winters. The Flood and Water Act 2010 was enacted after the surface water network flooded 56,000 properties in the UK. Since that time, communities around the country have experienced an increase in severe flooding, and in the years following the Act, many prominent public servants have warned against building on floodplains. In December 2015, parts of the UK were devastated by record-breaking levels of rainfall as a result of Storm Desmond. In February 2020, due to storms Dennis, Chara and George, thousands of homes were flooded. The Met Office forecasts that intense rainfall associated with severe flash flooding could become 5 times more likely by the end of this century. And I've given a link to that information. The Environment Agency projects that even a smaller rise of 2 degrees centigrade would have severe consequences, with winter rainfall up by 6% by 2050. The site in Wimborne, Minster East, is no longer in flood zone 1, and attributed to climate change is now in flood zone 2 and 3 due to fluvial flood risk modelling. The proposed development is considered to be within the more vulnerable category as set out in the planning practice guidance, as the proposed uses are residential and an educational establishment. Mitigation measures are proposed, but I do not believe we should even be considering building here. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Mitigation measures are proposed, but I do not believe we should even be considering building here, and that we need to keep natural floodplains because they enable water to drain away naturally into the land. Parts of Wimborne Minster East is experiencing more frequent flooding, and an officer has told me that the drainage system is unable to cope from the surface water when we have heavy rainfall. This site would have to cope with not only surface water, groundwater, but of course the possibility of fluvial flooding. And I agree with Nigel Evans MP, who said in 2016 that building on floodplain is absolutely bonkers. Increased traffic and traffic congestion is one of the biggest complaints that I receive from residents. The Lye Road and Wimborne Road West are experiencing congestion from increased traffic, and the road has been narrowed for cars and other vehicles considerably because of the cycle pathway. Coal Hill is being used as a cut through, which is causing problems and congestion and will undoubtedly become worse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Before I go to members of the committee, officers, is there anything that you wish to reflect on from the public representations, either the written submissions from the public or from the local member? I'll come to you first, Naomi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in terms of the public submission regarding the concerns about screening, that has been covered in the officer's presentation and discussed in detail. I'll be happy to answer any further questions members might have on that. In terms of the concerns raised by Councillor Rowe, in terms of the response from the Environment Agency, they're happy that the proposed levels do provide a robust mitigation in terms of the flood zones, that the remodelling, and it provides a robust approach to the worst case scenario, which is includes an 85% climate change modelling. And in terms of actually building on the site, the sequential test has been carried out in line with national policy, and a sequentially preferable site hasn't been found. Again, I'm happy to answer further questions on that should members have them.
Okay, before anyone else comes in, Annalee wishes to make a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really just wanted to support the statements that Naomi has already made, and particularly to recognise that clearly flooding is a significant concern and absolutely has been given very careful consideration by officers in relation to this site. National policy, as you're aware, does direct us to seek to direct development away from those areas that are at risk of flooding, but it also sets out the approach we should take, as has been taken on this site in terms of the sequential test. So seeking to ensure there are no other suitable or available sites in lower areas at risk of flooding. So I just really wanted to support the statement already made by Naomi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Would Chris Osborne or Neil Turner wish to make any comment on the public representations before I move on to member debate?
Not at this stage, thank you. I'll wait for the questions.
Thank you. Neil Turner, do you wish to make any comments?
I made just a short statement in relation to traffic congestion, in that, and to reinforce what Naomi said. So the junction to Lye Road has been approved under a separate application. That the travel plan remains valid, and there's no material considerations from the proposed development that raise any highway safety concerns.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, I have a long list of members already building, and my first member of the committee is Mike Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Naomi. Naomi, that was a really good presentation, but I've been looking at the Government UK website and looking specifically at the National Planning Policy Framework. This is to do with the Greenbelt. The fundamental aim of the Greenbelt is to prevent urban sprawl. That's what it states. And secondly, once established, Greenbelt boundaries should only be altered where exceptional circumstances are fully evidenced and justified. Could I ask what the exceptional circumstances are in this case?
Yes, sorry, I'm just getting up the the Greenbelt slide, so we're talking to a relevant slide. Just bear with me. I'll just use this one, sorry, as the example. In terms of the reallocation of the Greenbelt boundary, that was done as part of the allocation in the current adopted local plan. So the plan was adopted in 2014. The site was allocated as part of that plan, and that the realignment of the Greenbelt boundary is part of that site allocation. So it's not specifically related to this application. It's it is part of the allocation. So in terms of the exceptional circumstances, in terms of the local plan, I'm not a policy officer. I wasn't involved in the allocation of the site, but I can only suggest it was for the requirement for housing to be provided and the requirement for a future school site.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I'll add to that is in the course of the adoption of that local plan, it did go through a full inquiry and went up to the planning inspectorate. So it has had full scrutiny. Mike, was there anything else you wanted to ask at this stage?
No, Madam Chair, not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to my next speaker, and that's David Took.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have got 3 questions really, just that I'd like a little bit of clarification on. First of all, affordable housing, which will not be provided because of the 110,000 Section 106 agreement, and the DV's office have agreed that's a maximum viability. Do the DV's office, and by the way, I used to work for the DV's office many years ago, have they provided a breakdown that can be subject to any independent challenge? Having worked for them, I'm aware that they are not always correct in what they do, and they have been challenged many times in the past. So can we look at what they say and how they say it and get an independent view of that? My second point, or my second question, is the presentation mentioned, and the word was that the school site was to be transferred to the council. Can I confirm paragraph 814.1 is that this is actually a sale to the council rather than a transfer? We will be buying this for £600,000. And the report final slide mentioned that the developer will contribute 60k to the site. Has that been netted off against the 600,000, or is it in excess? Is it on top of the 600,000? And my final question is page 51, informative 9. Could somebody explain that, please? Because it says no ground raising or buildings must be located outside of the green belt. And that strikes me as no ground or buildings must be located outside the green belt. Doesn't sound quite right to me, but I'm fully prepared to be corrected. Thank you.
So in terms of the district valuer, as I pointed out in my presentation, they are an independent professional body that work solely for the public sector. When they have provided a review of the viability assessment that was submitted, in terms of the considerations of the site, the developer has substantial abnormal costs in relation to the delivery of the school site, so they have to provide the access and the services to the site. The developable area of the site has also been reduced as a requirement to provide land for the first school, and the developer also has to do the realignment works for the watercourse on Lye Road. So they're all substantial abnormals that add to the cost of developing this site. Again, the DV is an independent professional who assesses viabilities on the public sector's behalf. They have produced that review. Officers have reviewed it, and they have agreed with the outcome of that. In terms of the transfer of the land, yes, we are buying the land. It is £600,000. The £60,000 contribution will be taken off the £600,000, which is secured in the 106. So a payment of £540,000 will be made. The money from that has been, or the £540,000 has been secured from the other residential developments as part of the allocation, so the Quarterjack development, the Parmenter development, and the other allocations within WMC8, and they will that money will be used to pay for the site. So then the land will be transferred once the site school works have been carried out, as I mentioned, so the access and the services for the school site. So the land will be transferred to the council once that work has been completed, and that needs to be done by the occupation of the 34th dwelling. Does that answer your questions? I think in terms of informative 9, I'm going to have to refer to my colleague Chris Osborne from the LFA, because that was an LFA informative.
Okay, before Chris comes in, Phil Crowther, our solicitor, wanted to come in on the school site question.
Thank you, Chairman. Naomi's largely dealt with what I was going to say. It was just whether I could helpfully answer the question. But yeah, just to be clear, the other developers on the site allocation was required to deliver a primary school. There are other owners and developers that have contributed towards the acquisition of the site, so the net cost to the council for the school site will be 0 because of the contributions that Naomi explained we've collected from those other developers. Thank you, Chairman.
May I come back, Chair?
Yeah, if it's on that point, because obviously we've still got your other point to be answered yet.
Informative 9, yeah. I understand that the DV's office is independent. Well, they're actually a government agency. But the question wasn't quite answered. Was have they given a breakdown of that valuation, and is it possible to actually submit that to another source of valuation just to get a confirmation of it? As the DV's office is not always right. We can't paint them as some sort of oracle as to what's going on. So that question wasn't quite answered, whether it's possible to challenge the DV's valuation. Thank you for the clarification on the school site and the transfer price.
If I could come back on, Councillor Took, your point, what we do as officers is we review the viability assessment that's submitted by the district valuer. If we as officers have got concerns, we do go back and we do challenge the district valuer on those assessments. We don't seek to get further third-party advice, and we go to the district valuer for that independent advice, and further advice is not required. And we do challenge the district valuer if we feel as officers that there is issues that are not being addressed, or something needs to be revised, and that has happened in the case of some applications.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you go on to informative note 9, please?
Is that directed to me, Madam Chair?
I believe so.
Informative number 9, just to check, is that in relation to soil management during construction? I think the councillor mentioned about raising of ground levels in the greenbelt area.
It says no. It's on page 51 of the officer's report, right at the bottom of it.
I'll read it out just to save everyone faffing around trying to find it. No ground raising or buildings must be located outside of the green belt, and the 1 in 1,000 year southwest flooding extents along the northern boundary of the school site. Due to the likely loss of pluvial and or fluvial storage and subsequent displacement of flood risk, any layout or drainage strategy which does take a sequential approach to this area is likely to meet with an objection from the LFA at discharge of conditions / reserved matter stage. I think it also needs a little bit of translation into layman's language for us poor councillors.
The bit that concerned me, Madam Chairman, with your permission, is the no ground raising or buildings must be located outside of the green belt, i.e. the implication being that all ground raising or buildings must be located inside the green belt.
Yeah, forgive me, that informative was not actually recommended by me. The only informative that I've recommended is in respect of soil management and conditions in respect of detailed design. I suspect that comment came from me early in the design process, and that was in relation to making sure that the SUDS feature was positioned outside of the existing areas that are at risk of surface water flooding, on the basis that I didn't want to see that proposed SUDS basin filling with received flow from the surface water that comes onto Lye Road.
Okay.
And that was addressed by the applicant through the design process.
Okay, I think in this instance, depending on the outcome of any recommendation, is that if this application is recommended for approval by members, that we delegate to officers whether or not that informative note still needs to be included or needs to be revised. It's an informative note, not a condition. So it's not going to be a major impact on the decision, but it needs to be right if a decision notice is issued. So would you be happy with that, David?
I would. It just seems strange. I mean, if I paraphrase it slightly, what it's saying is no buildings must be located outside of the green belt, and that just sounds the complete opposite to what I would expect.
If there had been a comma, I might have agreed with you, but you need to read the whole sentence to get the context.
Well, the ground raising or is not really. It's no ground raising or
I'm
building.
now going to move on to my next speaker, and that's Alex Brenton.
Hi, mine is questioned. It may be that I have missed the bit. I think what I was looking at is it slide slide 30. I think I was sort of flicking through. I was concerned, it may not be, it's one that affects the connectivity of this site to the rest of Wimborne. I can see, yes, this is what I'm looking at. There is obviously, if you look at the red arrows to the south, yes, you're connecting this site to the football area and the new houses further south. But if you've got 44 houses here and they're all going to be purchased by local people, they will have children, not little ones necessarily, but I'm wondering how we are going to persuade in the future your teenagers or your older juniors to cycle to places, because all these estates seem to be like a giant banjo. So we're directing all the sort of wheeled traffic out onto Lee Road again, where I know there's pavements and cycleways, but it would be so much more efficient if what I can't see is sort of footpaths, alleyways, cycleways connecting, going west into the other built up areas, so that one can pop round to see friends without having to do this sort of massive loop out onto the main road and back down again. And I feel we should really work at making some of these sites much more. So have I missed something? Are there cycleways going off to the east that join into other roads so that we don't have to direct everybody onto the main road? I just couldn't quite, it's on my screen, it's fairly small, and I'm thinking perhaps I've missed something. Could I ask that, please?
Yeah, I can answer that, Madam Chair. Councillor Brenton, in terms of that, so this is the whole allocation for WMC8. There's the opportunity for connections to the south, and they're secured in the Section 106 agreement, which then connects you to the Quarterjack development to the south here. The Quarterjack development to the south here is connected to the Parramatta Road development, or will be, via a link road through to between the two developments. In terms of if the connections from the south are brought forward, you can then go through the Barrett's development and then over to the Parramatta development here. So in terms of that link road, it's to be delivered in the near future, because it depends on the construction of the houses here, which are currently under construction. But there will be links between these two development sites. You then have you've got a skate park located here. There's allotments located down here, and then obviously we have the sang in terms of access to open space. Across the road, we've got access to the by the way open space, and also in terms of highways improvements, there's a dedicated cycle lane that's being installed on Lye Road. That's a new cycle lane, that's pure new cycle infrastructure that's currently being installed on Lye Road.
Can I come back? And routes to school? You know,
well, there will be a first school as part of the
yeah, I understand
the site allocation. So I mean, it's located on Lye Road, which is a well-connected road. There's bus services from Lye Road. In terms of you know, there's pavement on Lye Road again. There's the new cycle network, so it's well located in terms of proximity to Wimborne and the facilities there. It's also well located in terms of proximity to Coal Hill as well. But in terms of the application itself, you know, it's for the delivery of the infrastructure within the red line boundary.
Also, Alex, if you look at that slide, there's like a small finger of red towards the middle of the site. That is a dedicated pedestrian and cycle access to Lye Road. So they have, if you're on foot or on wheels, you haven't got to go all the way to the main vehicular access to the site. You have got a little shortcut to cut off that corner.
Fair enough, Chair, but I just sort of I just worry that in future we will be sending so many teenagers on bikes along Lye Road, that becomes an issue as well. Could I ask something else?
Yep.
And this is if you looked at the pictures of the houses, the slide showing the actual slide, where are we? Like 20, the plots, 20, that one. I've jotted a whole lot down here. I just noticed, I mean, we have, do these houses have working chimneys? They all have decorative chimneys. Are those working chimneys? Because I can't, from the ground plans, it's a bit vague whether those are actually sort of open fired flued stoves or what. I'm just concerned about should we say the modern, how modern these houses are. They don't appear to show solar panels. Well, you might not show that in a plan, I can see. But have they got air source heat pumps? Will these will the drain pipes, which appear to go straight down to groundwater sewer, well, not runoff, do they have rain gardens? Have they got water butts? The quality of the build, looking forward, are these houses, apart from being well insulated, fit for the modern life? Because I couldn't see any mention of how they would be heated. And in our considerations, I think it says that for new developments, local district heating or power systems should be considered. Were they considered, and are they being implemented?
To respond to that, condition 9 of the officer's report requires an energy statement to be submitted, and that's prior to development above damp-proof course. And what that requires is we require the details of how the development shall achieve at least 10% of the total regulated energy used for space heating, hot water provision, fixed lighting and ventilation, using the dwellings in each phase from renewable sources unless otherwise agreed with the local planning authority. The options for district heating and/or power facilities to serve the development have been investigated, and where it is possible to do so, the development should be connected to a district heating and/or power facility in accordance with the scheme to be submitted to the local planning authority. So those details have been secured by condition.
Sorry, Naomi, can you confirm the condition? Because condition 9 on my screen.
19.
19. Lovely, thank you.
Just to note as well, there's a water efficiency condition, condition 20. So the Environment Agency have recently requested that these conditions be imposed on planning applications. So they need to provide information regarding energy sources being from renewable energy, and in terms of water efficiency, they need to provide information in relation to that as well.
Thank you. Alex, does that answer your questions?
That's all for now. Put it that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to my next speaker, and that's Robin Cook.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, actually, I think Alex probably stolen some of my question there, because I wanted to ask about slide 30, if we can bring that back up again, regarding the access points. Can we have a look at slide 30, please? Okay, access points. The proposed ones to the south, they are proposed. How? First part of the question: how definite do we know at this stage that they link into either the existing quarterjack or the proposed sports facility? Coupled with that, is the new Lye Road access, is that, as we see it there, will that be the only way in and out? Or will we have a guarantee that those southern connections will be opened up? In other words, to allow further connectivity through the rest of the developments, albeit by different developers, admittedly. So on the longer term, are we looking at connections right the way through? Notwithstanding what Alex said about cycle connections, etc., because one of the problems we've got there is there isn't many major routes in and out of Wimborne. You've either got Lye Road or you've got the A31, which is to the south. So really, whatever you do to get into Wimborne, eventually you've got to come out onto Lye Road, whether it be cycling or on foot or whatever. But for this site, is it just that access there, or do we know in the future will they be able to access it from the other entrance, which I think is Lonsdale Road, it's known as, which leads to Quarterjack Park? That's the first question.
So in terms of that, the application has been assessed based on the access from Lye Road. The connections to Lonsdale Road to the south, they're future opportunity connections, and they're secured and safeguarded within the 106. So it's to be decided at a later date whether or not they should be brought forward, but they're safeguarded within the 106 for a period of 4 years. But the application itself has been assessed in relation to access from Lye Road that was approved in 2015. I don't know if Neil wants to add anything to that.
I'm not sure there's anything further I can add, Naomi, really.
Okay, can I ask a question related to that? Those connection points, are they vehicular or pedestrian?
Thank you. Thank you.
Both vehicular and pedestrian.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Madam Chairman. That was going to be my next point as well. And also, can I add on to that, if I may? One of the reasons I've asked about this is because historically, with another development adjacent to that, which is the Parmiter Road, the access there at the moment is via Parmiter Road, and we were advised at the time that it's likely that access to that will be changed as time goes by. That's really why I was questioning whether access will be made available through to avoid traffic now or in the future using Parmiter Road. That's the reason for my questioning on that one. No need to give an answer necessarily, but
I could come back on that if you want me to.
Well, I think what I'm saying is, you know, you've given me as far as you can guarantees that these are likely to happen, and if they happen, then that solves the problem, I think. Would I be right in saying?
I don't believe we feel there is a problem. As I said, the application has been assessed based on the access from Lye Road, and it's considered to be acceptable in terms of that access. Again, you know, the future opportunity for links to the south is secured in the 106 and safeguarded for 4 years. But just in terms of Parmiter, I appreciate that's a separate application, but the link road to Parmiter is still being delivered. It's just dependent on the construction of the Barrett site to the south.
Okay, and that's fine. I won't push that one anymore. Thank you very much. The only other question I've got now, I think it's been made clear, but I'd just like for absolute clarity, the school is a new school. It is not a replacement first school. It is in other words, it's an additional first school. So Wimborne Minster will then have 3 first schools. Am I right in saying that, if it's delivered?
So the school is for future school numbers. So it will be a new school that can be brought forward as and when required by the numbers needed for education places.
Fine. Thank you very much, Naomi. Thanks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. No other questions, Robin?
No, thank you.
Okay, I shall move on to my next speaker, and that's Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just some clarifications from the report, excellent report, by the way, by the officer. In terms of the Home Office garages, can I just get confirmation that they don't overlook the neighbouring properties?
Yes, I can confirm that. Let me just find an appropriate slide. In terms of the roof lights provided, they do face towards the development, the plot site. So sorry, I'm just looking for. So these are always to the front and orientated towards the, as you can see, they're above the garage doors and always orientated into the plot. I'm just looking for plan. I don't know if you can, if it's large enough, but you can see here we've got the Home Office garage here, and you can see the 2 small squares here. They're the roof lights facing towards the plot. Again here, the 2 roof lights facing this direction, and then the Home Office garages on this boundary here. All the roof lights are facing in towards the development.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Madam Chairman, was in terms of the estate roads, do I understand that they're all being made to a suitable adoption standard?
Yes.
They are, thank you. And if I could come to the trees, it's little wonder that the public get a little bit sceptical when we come to these large developments and the manner in which existing mature trees are dealt with. All too often we seem to be taking out mature trees. We're told that they're diseased or they're not of an adequate quality or there's something wrong with them, so they need to be removed. And I think that the public to a certain degree are fed up with hearing this. I know as a councillor I'm fed up with hearing it, but we deal with professionals, tree officers that look at these trees. What I would ask is that, and I've even read the report, that we do our utmost to try and preserve those mature trees that we've got on the site. It was extremely disappointing to see the trees that were taken out along the Lye Road, Wimborne Road area pre-COVID, long time ago. That tree in Ancient Headland was taken out, and we lost the trees on Julian's Road as well as we come into the town that helped to soften that urban feel as you come into the town, as you come across the Stour Valley floodplain from Lake Gates. So could I just ask, is it possible to retain some of those mature trees? Is that a done deal now, or can we have a sympathetic approach to those mature trees that are on the site? I know that they're not, they don't have tree preservation orders on them, but I would be extremely reluctant to see those mature trees, particularly the elms, that would be taken out of the site.
So in terms of the trees to be removed, they are elms, and I've discussed this with the tree officer, and the tree officer, they are 9 meters high, and he's confirmed that when elms are above 7 meters high, and they are known for becoming poor in condition in terms of being above that height. That's to do with the beetle that carries the Dutch elm's disease, because apparently it flies at about 7 meters high, and the tree officer has agreed that these trees are in poor condition, and considers it acceptable and a betterment that these trees would actually be replaced. So in terms of the future sustainability of this boundary, replacing these trees is actually a betterment. I would also suggest that the developer is going to the cost of removing and replacing them, which would be an unnecessary cost if the trees weren't in poor condition. So I think in terms of future-proofing the boundary, replacing these trees with oaks and maples, so there'll be 30 replacement trees, is actually a betterment for the site.
Okay, thank you. It's just still disappointing to lose such mature trees. Can I keep going, Madam Chairman?
For the time being.
Okay. The next one was on the obviously we're going to raise the heights of the soil in the area. Just get confirmation that in terms of the hydrology and the water table within the area, that's going to be properly accounted for. And I'll come into flooding in a bit, but can I just get a confirmation from the officers that that is going to be properly dealt with? I'm sure it is going to be, but the fact that we're actually changing the height levels within the site for that flood mitigation, just that we are assured that we're not going to significantly affect the hydrology on that site that's going to affect the gardens in the neighbouring area.
Shall I pick that one up, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so in respect of that, I've requested an informative, which I believe has been added, which considers soil management during the construction process to avoid over-compaction of any ground that's being laid or soil that's been imported into the site. But I would also add that any impermeable areas will be positively drained away. So the drainage strategy for the site is not to drain it into the ground, but to take it away, store it in the attenuation basin, and then discharge it into the ordinary watercourse at a controlled rate.
Okay. Can I come back, Madam Chairman?
You can. Next question.
Okay, yeah. In terms of, it's just clarification really. I was a little bit confused as we got to the various flood zones with 1 and 2 and the 85%. Do I take it that when we look at the flood 3, is it that's the 1 in 1,000 years, is it?
No, so flood zone 3 is the 1 in 100-year event, okay. And flood zone 2 is the 1 in 1,000-year event.
Okay.
And as a result of the remodelling, the EA have found that the site is now in flood zone 2, so the 1 in 1,000 year, and would be in future flood zone 3, but only in respect of the 85% climate change allowance. And current climate change modelling suggests that the 47% climate change allowance is more appropriate, at which point the site is then no longer, or that part, well, specifically that site, is no longer in future flood zone 3.
Okay. If I can go on, Madam Chairman, in terms of the annotation pond, that's going to release water into the watercourse alongside Lye Road.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as the chairman knows, and many on this committee know, I am a local board member for Wimborne Minster, and I've lived in Wimborne all my life. I was born in the town, and in recent times we've seen, the last couple of months, we've seen Lye Road flood to unprecedented proportions, something I've never seen in my lifetime and the residents haven't seen. But from Rodway's Corner to Parmiter, virtually the entire length of the road was flooded to above the pavement level. You couldn't see the pavements, and that was quite an eye-opener, because we'd never seen that before. Lye Road has always had a problem with flooding. The water table is so low there, and the gullies can't cope with it, as I think Councillor Rowe alluded to in her presentation, and spoken to an officer, that the gullies there do struggle with the surface water. They run so shallow, and you as highways officers know that. So I've got a concern about this attenuation pond and it feeding water into that area back into the stream that runs alongside Lye Road at this point of Lye Road, and rather than taking that surface water directly down to the Stour.
So the site, this particular part of the wider local plan allocation, drains very slowly towards Lye Road at the greenfield rates that Naomi showed us before. What the applicant is proposing to do is to continue discharging at 14.9 litres a second, which is the greenfield rate during the 1 in 1 year event. But for rainfall events above that, they will hold more flow than they perhaps need to or are required to under planning policy. So that subbasin that you see there is of order over 2,000 meters cubed of storage.
Okay.
In respect of the existing flood risk problems along Lye Road, that's one of the reasons why we have requested that the applicant reduce the peak flows from that site. We are aware of the flooding that Lye Road experiences.
Yeah, if I can come back, Madam Chairman, in terms of the future management of that annotation pond, do I understand that's going to be under a private management company rather than either Wessex Water or Dorset Council taking on the responsibility for it?
Yes, so that would be a private management company, which is secured in the section 106. The applicant has advised that this is something they do on other developments. They've got a number of developments across the Dorset Council area. In terms of the management of the attenuation pond, the main management in relation to that is making sure that the system is clear, the grass is mown and the landscaping around is maintained and there's no blockages. Therefore, they feel that the management company that would be managing the rest of the site is best placed to manage that attenuation pond rather than a third party such as Wessex Water. Just to add, sorry, Councillor Bartlett, in planning terms, that is acceptable, and the management of the attenuation pond is not a material planning consideration, but the proposal for it to be managed by a private management company, which is secured in the 106, is acceptable in planning terms.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, through you, Madam Chairman, in terms of a private management company looking after the future of that attenuation pond, my concerns evolve around 5 to 10 years as to whether that management company would be in existence. Who checks as to whether they're doing the proper maintenance and management of that attenuation pond, and who would be held accountable in the future?
I think I'm going to ask Phil Crowther to come in on this one.
I think so as well.
Thank you, Chair. My experience, and I can't say that this will happen for this particular site, but the management companies that I have experience of involve all of the residents are members of that management company, so they all contribute to the cost. They all have a vested interest in making sure that the facilities and assets that in the management company are looked after properly. So that's how I have seen them set up. So I would expect, because all the residents are members of them, they would all have a vested interest in making sure that their properties don't flood, and therefore the drainage facility, the drainage structures are properly maintained. But like Naomi has said, the management VIN consideration, we can require it.
Phil, we lost your connection there. You just need to repeat your last sentence.
So as just to repeat what Naomi said, the management vehicle is not a planning consideration. We can require that it is properly managed, and that's what we would be securing in the section 106, but we can't prescribe who will do that. Thank you.
Anna, you have your camera turned on. Do you wish to contribute as well at this point?
Thank you. It was just to briefly add that the ongoing management and maintenance of the pond would be secured by condition, and the council does have enforcement powers. So should that not occur, and we would have the ability to investigate and, if necessary, undertake enforcement action. Thank you.
Well, that's good, Madam Chairman, that we'd have enforcement action on there. Is it possible to put in a condition then that we would check it at some regular period?
So we don't generally actively monitor compliance with conditions. We do rely on reports to us if there are issues or if development is not in accordance with the conditions. And I think I've slightly come back to the point that Mr. Crowther made a moment ago in relation to the fact that we would expect that residents on the site would alert us if there were issues.
Okay, Chris Osborne, you wanted to come back as well.
Yeah, just to add as well that if the drainage features start to fail and it's starting to cause flooding, then those can be reported to the council towards the flood risk management team as well, and we have an obligation to investigate flooding. And at that point, we would typically undertake a flood investigation to find out what's gone wrong and who's responsible for maintaining those features, and we can then pursue them in that fashion as well.
Yeah, I'll leave it. Thank you. I'll leave it there, Madam Chairman. I'm not 100% happy with that. My experience in management companies on estates isn't a good one. But I've raised my concerns. I think they are genuine concerns, and I think that is, in terms of that attenuation pond, it will be something that needs to be closely watched. And as the officers have said, their view is that the residents would keep a close watch on that because their own properties are at risk. My concern is that if that attenuation pond fails, then it will put substantially more properties at risk that have nothing to do with this development site. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, I think there are laws and statutes around that if there are problems in the future. But I do understand your feelings, but I think the officers have put in enough mitigation as they can within their remit. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next speaker now, and that's Barry Gorringe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Providing the applicant meets the conditions for the housing scheme, which is conditions 1 to 20, the school conditions of 21 to 26, and the legal agreement is signed, then I'm proposing to go with the recommendation on page 57.
Thank you. Does that include the amendments that Naomi posted up?
Yes, that's including the information note, which has been delegated to officers.
Yeah, and the alterations that were made at the start of the presentation.
Correct.
You recall she put up a slide.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Mike Dyer speaking. I'd be happy to second that proposal. I've listened to the member comments about the flood risk, and I can understand the worries about the detail, but overriding that is the fact that the EA consider the proposal robust in terms of flood management, and I think members have picked over the detail quite well. So that seems to be the major concern, or one of the major concerns of members, and I think that's been answered pretty well by the officers, and it seems to me, as with other schemes, it's been through the consideration process. There's obviously been pre-application discussions, and it now comes out and seems to me is to be a well-refined scheme. So very happy to second, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm going to move on to my next speaker, and that's Alex Brenton. And then after that, Shane Bartley wants to come back quickly. And after that, I think I will close the debate. We've been at it for an hour.
Thank you. It's a question, and I know you'll probably say it's there in page whatever it is. I'm assuming that, you know, the officers have done a lot of work and they've worked out the surface areas that will drain. Do these include the proposed drainage amount coming off the new school when it finally comes through? Because obviously there'll be a lot of roofs there. And the other thing that, you know, I can quite see the attenuation pond will cope with the estate fine. I just wonder about extending once you get into schools and hard playing fields and such like, how that will affect the water runoff. And the other thing, and this is my ignorance, and probably because I haven't looked at the scales, but what is the distance between the top end of, or shall we say the western end of this development, and the attenuation pond? And what is the fall? I mean, I've laid enough patios to know the sort of fall you need. I just, you know, I'm surprised that there's enough fall to be sure that your runoff will run, because when we get those sort of, you know, an inch of rain in an hour jobs, I can't see that that is going to work unless you actually have a river almost running between, because you have such a large area of hard standing. So it's a question, and it might be that it's in there somewhere and I just haven't found it, but I'd love to know, what is the fall over that area, and has it included the school roofs?
I think Chris Osborne has the answer.
Yeah, sure. Great questions. So the school area, the answer to the first question about the sizing of the attenuation basin is that it does include impermeable surfacing of the school site up to 50% of that area. And it makes an allowance of over 400 metres cubed for the school site. That will need to be revisited if obviously there are to be greater amounts than 50% impermeable areas on that site, but that would be looked at through the condition that's been recommended. In respect of the fall across the site, there was a problem with achieving the fall across the site, particularly as you get down to the school area, and that's one of the reasons for the school site to be raised, particularly the bits that are being developed and the access road that's directly adjacent the school area. As it so happens, the changing of the floodplains also necessitated that ground level raising as well, but it was also required for drainage purposes to achieve the gravity fall that the councillor is referring to. We asked the applicant to provide long sections to substantiate that, so I can't confirm to you what exactly the fall is. I think it's probably over a metre from the western end to the basin, but I wouldn't want to be quoted on that. But long sections have been provided which demonstrate a fall across the site.
Does that answer your question, Alex?
It answers that attention has been paid to this issue. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So Shane, last speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I just sum up on it. It was interesting that the 25 houses per hectare is what we're looking at this site, when the master plan said it should be 30. But if there was significant reasons why that shouldn't occur, then, and it doesn't conform to surrounding area, then that would be allowable. The type of housing and the size of the housing that we've got on this development doesn't do anything to accommodate the possibility of our children and young families born here remaining in the area. Well, from a planning point of view, this conforms to the master plan. It is nevertheless disappointing. Wimborne and Coal Hill areas are running short of development land that will bring forward the necessary affordable type of housing that we need for our young people to remain here. And it's while I appreciate that this conforms to the master plan from 2012, adopted by 2014 by the former East Dorset District Council, and the draconian rules that are laid out within the MPPF document make it difficult for us as members to vote against such development proposals as this. It does come with a heavy heart, you know, with some of what you're faced. I am predisposed to support it, but I'm not happy, obviously. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I do understand your point on that. However, we can't change that sort of allocation policy one plan at a time. We are in the process of looking at our first Dorset Council local plan, and I think your comments are probably better directed to the debate of the policies to be within that plan. So can I suggest you speak to Graham Carr-Jones, who's the portfolio holder for housing?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so Shane was our last speaker. I'm now going to put it to the vote. We have a recommendation for grant, which has been duly seconded. Can we have the slide up showing the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. You will recall that at the start of the meeting and the presentation, Naomi did put up some amendments and changes, and the proposer and seconder have agreed to incorporate those into the recommendation. So the recommendation is to grant permission as in recommendation A, and that is for outline for the school site, but full permission for the rest of the site. And that is subject to signing of the Section 106 agreement. And the alternative recommendation is if that agreement is not signed within 6 months from the date of the committee or such extended time as agreed by the head of planning, then permission will be refused under delegation. So that is your recommendation, members. I'm now going to go to the roll call, please. So Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've heard all of the officers' report and I've taken part fully in the debate, and I am minded to approve.
Thank you. Mike Barron.
I've taken part in the debate. I've listened to all the arguments for and against, and with a heavy heart, I'm minded to approve as well.
Thank you. Alex Brenton.
I've listened to the debate, I've taken part, and I really think we may be making ourselves trouble for the future, but bearing in mind the legislation at the moment, I am in favour.
Thank you. Robin Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've seen the full presentation, listened to the debate, taken part, and I'm minded to support the recommendation.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
I've been present throughout, listened to the debate and vote to approve as per the recommendation.
Thank you. Barry Gorringe.
I've listened to the debate and the proposal by Naomi, and I'm happy to approve.
Thank you. David Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to the debate. I hope we've got the flooding okay, so I'm minded to approve.
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm going to just give you a little reminder. This is the vote. If you wish to make a comment on the merits of the application, you should have done so when you had the opportunity for debate. So from now on, please, I need to know that you've attended the whole presentation and what your vote is. I do not want to hear any more comments about the merits of the application, please. Thank you. Julie Robinson is not in the meeting. David Took.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened to the debate, I've taken part in it, and on balance, I'm minded to approve.
Thank you. Bill Trite has given his apologies. John Worth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened to the presentation and the debate, and I'm minded to approve.
Thank you very much. That is everybody. David Northover, can you just confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Yes, Chairman. I make that unanimous, 9-4, none against.
Okay, thank you. So our minded decision is to grant. I will now pass over to Annalee as the appropriate officer to make the delegated decision.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I confirm I have heard the full presentation and the debate, and that this decision will be actioned as per the minded to wishes of the committee, in that it will be approved in line with recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the application therefore is granted as per the officer recommendation with the amendments as displayed at the beginning of the presentation. Members, you're pleased to know that item 5, urgent items, there are none. So therefore I will close the meeting at 12:08. Just before we go, David, could you just update us on where we will be for our next meeting, please? Is it going to be virtual still?
My understanding is our next meeting is December now. I think it's the first of December. The intention is that will be our first meeting back in person at the Allendale Centre, and as it stands, that is the case. Should anything change, I will let you know, but that's what is intended to be happening.
Lovely. So let's hope the technology works.
That's correct.
So thank you everybody for your contributions this morning, both officers presenting and all of those behind the scenes and members. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.